tell me about your background. You're clearly a very strong, successful entrepreneur and now an angel investor. I also know that you dropped out of medical school. What made you do that, and what made you pursue your dream, which is now a big empire?
Sure. Thank you for having me here. I'm excited to be here. So I went to school at UC Davis. I was doing my undergrad there. I was going to med school there. Ended up taking a year off. I was just getting really burnt out. I was doing research at the vet school, internships at the med school, getting published in journals. Everything was always just completely focused around going to med school, becoming a doctor, and as far back as I could remember, through high school and elementary school, I always wanted to be a doctor. Ended up getting into a program in New York at the New York Academy of Medicine. I was doing research there during the day, and then at night I would come home and I would do odd jobs on Craigslist, right? No, not those kinds of odd jobs. I was basically building apps and websites and trying to make extra money because I wanted to move out. I was staying with my uncle in the basement. I wanted to move out. Didn't want to ask my parents for money. And one thing led to another. I came back to San Francisco, told my parents, hey, med school, I'm going to put that on hold. I'm going to start a company up with a friend that I don't really know that well in a space I have no idea about, but I just have this gut feeling.
Did they get upset?
Oh, you can imagine.
I just have to interject.
Yeah,
what the hell are you talking about?
You can imagine, especially Indian parents, right? They were, my dad just walked out of the room. My mom.
Oh, no, Iranians, same thing.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
My mom started crying, and then it stayed that way for a while, right? And but luckily the companies that I worked on ended up becoming pretty successful, and and I always have a passion for healthcare and medicine, but I hated studying, so we'll have to keep it at that.
Tell us about your first company. So you have a passion for healthcare and medicine, totally different than technology, right? How did you even come up with a business model? How did you come up with, okay, this is my business plan, this is what I want to do, this is what I'm passionate about? Because I bet you a lot of us out there, we know what we love, right? We know what we're passionate about. There's that one thing that we love to pursue. But we think about how do we start it? How do we plan it together and bring it home? How did you do that?
I'd say, so this was probably about like 10 years ago, right? So the difference is when you're really, really passionate about something, you're just jumping into it and you're working on it night and day. You believe in it. If someone tells you it's not going to work, they can tell you 100 times it's not going to work. But if you believe in it, you don't care, right? You're just like heads down, focused on it. And I think early on, that was like, you sort of block out all these other blinders of, well, how are you going to make money, and what's the market size? Like, I never thought what the market size was the first company that I was starting, right? I just felt like it was a problem that I had and that I was solving, and that's really what
was that problem? Tell us about that company.
So the first one was Burp, as you mentioned, and I was born out.
I'm sorry, I have to interject here. So it actually, why was it called Burp?
Well, it was essentially India's answer to Yelp, right? So Yelp,
okay.
Burp, and you're in India, and so this is the first time I was traveling around India with friends. I was going to all the different places in India. Usually I just go with family and you eat 10 times a day and go home and you sleep and you eat again, right? And so being able to go around with friends to different parts, everyone speaks a different language, different cultures, religions. We found it really hard to find places to go to, right? Like restaurants, hotels, bars. So then we came back to the US. We thought, why don't we put together something around organized content? Because today, back then when you're going to India, they'd say, drive down the street, go past 3 cows, look at the tree on the left,
yes. and they give the wrong address probably
exactly.
At the end of the day. Yeah, it's the same thing in Iran, and you also have to be in traffic. There's a lot of traffic in India.
Oh, ridiculous! Yeah.
Tell me how many users use Burp right now?
So this started quite a while ago, back in 2004. When we started just in Bombay. Ended up doing very sort of grassroots, right? Just, we didn't have marketing budget. We didn't go out and raise money. It was just our own money that we'd put in. Within a couple of years, we spread it all across India. There was a few 100,000 users within the first year, a couple million within the first 2 years. And the company ended up getting acquired by Network 18 out in India. So.
That's excellent. I want to talk about Blue Lithium that you sold to Yahoo. Tell us about that. Tell us about what it does, how it came to you, how you took the risk to start it, and weren't you sort of afraid of jumping to your next venture? Because a lot of us may think, okay, we did it, we had a strong venture, let's just sit back, enjoy, let's not take another risk. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so I'll address that first before Blue Lithium. So, I've had one other company after Blue Lithium as well, and I think one of the challenges you get that when you're out here in the valley, it's like a rat race, right? You feel like you're a robot, just you keep doing the same thing over and over again. You feel like you have to succeed. There's like, you're up against the wall no matter what. And I think once you've had a success or two, it becomes really difficult to figure out what's the next thing, because you realize you're going to spend the next 4 to 5 years of your life on this specific project. How do you make sure that you're guaranteeing yourself for success? And that's a really, really tough question, because what you do is you remove everything that a true entrepreneur has, right? You remove that gut, sometimes you're removing that passion, because you're overthinking it so much that you just outthink yourself. If you put 3 smart guys in a room, everyone's going to be able to poke a hole in any idea, right? It doesn't matter if it's YouTube or Google or Facebook, whatever it is. And that is probably the toughest thing, I think, for being a second-time founder. But Blue Lithium, I had never really been into the advertising space, teamed up with a few other people that were already thinking about this idea. And just, the exciting thing about doing things like in online advertising or mobile advertising is you can't pick up a book and figure out what to do or how to do it. You're defining the market and the space as you go along. And I feel like that part is really exciting. So.
That's interesting. So from food, you went to advertising.
Yep.
And tell me about your family background. Did your mom, feel comfortable with your second venture as it got successful? Was she crying less?
Yeah, I mean, to this day, right? I think being an Indian mom, she'll still be like, see, if you were a doctor, right? And all my friends are doctors, right? They're all finished their residency now. So anytime someone comes over, they're like, see, if you were a doctor, we wouldn't have to ask, so and so. So I think that's just being Indian. I think there's always going to be that. It really took a while for my parents to sort of get really comfortable with the fact that I was moving on, right? I think my parents came from India, to the United States. They came here and really left everything they knew behind, right? Their brothers, sisters, family, and built that life to sort of find that American dream out here. And so they want the best foundation for my brother and I. And so if they think, all right, you're a doctor, an engineer, or a lawyer, you're set. And being in the tech space, you never know what's going to happen, right? Mm-hmm. So I'd say after Blue Lithium is when they started to say, okay, well, maybe you're onto something.
Great. I want to get back to that company, but I want to ask you, what's the best or most memorable advice that your father gave you?
Got it. Yeah. So I'd say early on it was my dad's always had like a strong foundation with education, right, and just making sure the education is sort of solid. And I think, now when I go back to it and I think about going to college, I was like, I wish I didn't even go to college at that time, right? Because I think sometimes that, that time span might have been, more worthwhile. But I think back at it, I'm so glad that, I really had that time to focus on going to school. And maybe I'm not doing anything with what I learned in college, but it helps you develop, it helps you think, it helps you just stay more focused and puts things in perspective as you go along.
Okay, let's go back to Blue Lithium, and that's a company that you sold to Yahoo. For myself, again, very detached from the tech world, I probably would get lost if you leave me here. What does that even mean? I mean, how did you go to Yahoo? Hello, I have this great company and I want to sell it, or they came after you?
Because you never want to sell your company, right? You want to be acquired, and I think the challenge is you have to build something that is super exciting. You have to be able to sell that vision to whoever the person is that's buying it. So you have to tell them, here's why, here's what we can bring to you, and here's how we can take that dream to the next level. And if you really sell them on that vision and dream, that's the biggest thing. Most of the time during these acquisitions, especially Yahoo, right, they shut down half the things they buy anyway. So,
how did you sell that vision and dream? Tell us about that moment. I mean, how was it? What went through your mind? Because I can only imagine, you put your heart and soul into this, and you're worried. What if they don't like it? What if it doesn't go through? Tell us about that human moment where you said, you know what, this is make or break. What was it like?
Great question, because it's exactly, it's like a baby that you've built, and you see it sort of growing, and then all of a sudden the minute you let go, it's gone, right? You can't control it. And I think a lot of times entrepreneurs don't really think about what happens after an exit. They always think about, I need to get to that exit. And sometimes, like after the exit, it's extremely painful, right? So, you know, you've got to come to a point where you figure out, right, here's what the market conditions are, here's what I've done, and here's what the value is, right? So either you keep building it and you think, all right, in the next few years, I can increase the valuation of the company by 10x or whatever it might be, or given where we're at today, this is an awesome sort of opportunity for not only me, but the rest of the team.
Very good. And you're also an angel investor. First of all, I want you to define what an angel investor is. Who is an angel investor? And then how do you pick the projects that you want to be involved? What is it that has to touch your heart or mind, or is it, you know, all about the money? What is it that you go after now?
Sure. So, I mean, I think when you're in the Valley, right, I think anyone can be an angel investor, right? It's being able to take money and give it to a company, a startup, and it doesn't have to be in tech, it can be in any field, and you're hoping that investment pays off. I think it's getting really, really challenging to invest in companies here because there's so many awesome companies, and it's hard to tell the difference between what's good and what's bad. Right? When you look today, you look at these incubators that are out there, they do a really good job of making everyone look awesome. And so you can't, you know, when you look at 300 companies, it's hard to figure out which one of those 300 is going to be, you know, the one that's the best fit. So, you know, when we make investments, we have a fund called Team in Residence. It's mainly a family of funds that we put together, and we invest our own money. You know, we really look at teams and that founding team to see what that dynamic is, right? They don't have to have always been successful in the past, but I think being able to learn from, let's say, previous failures, right? I think being able to bounce back from that, someone that's got a tremendous amount of passion, you know, what's going to give them that unfair advantage in space, I think is critical, right? And being an angel investor, you've got to make those bets super early so you don't have a lot to go on, right? It's the space and it's the people.
That's great. I think you touched on a very good point that I want to take you to, Krishna. You know, when you're looking at startups and these incubators, you know, they might have not necessarily accomplished something big, right? And they might have not have a solid track record. And the idea of failing but retracking and gaining your strength and getting back on your feet is something that, you know, you seem to notice in the people who you want to invest in. Tell me about a moment in your career where you failed, because we all have failed at some point, big, small, you know, with a level of risk to others or not necessarily just damaging to ourselves. Tell us about that moment and how you overcame that and what you learned from that failure.
Got it. So I mean, I think, you know, I think a lot of people look at failure in two ways, right? Some people will say, you know, fail fast and quick, right? So that you learn from it. And then I think other people will look at it and say, you know, there's no option for failure. And, you know, a lot of times when I was sort of going through these startups, that's how I would look at it, as no option for failure. You know, there could be plenty of times when, you know, one of my last companies called MobClicks, it was a mobile advertising company, and we had different product lines, right? And you know, it's very challenging because you're building a platform on top of Android and Apple, and you don't know if these guys are going to shut your company down or anything like that. And you know, picking a product line, and you know, you could just imagine you go down, you say, hey, we want to jump into virtual currency, you know, because we think it's going to be big. Zynga's in it. Everyone wants to, you know, do everything tied to it. You spend all these resources and time on it. You build a product. The minute, you know, you release the product, the platform decides, hey, we're not going to allow any of this anymore, and they shut it down. And that becomes pretty tough, right? And the thing is if you've got the right team, then you can go ahead and bounce back from that very quickly and figure out what is it that you can salvage from that? How can you learn from that, and how can you move on?
But not everybody has the right team. I mean, what if you're by yourself? What if we have a young you know, immigrant entrepreneur who started something and failed and, you know, couldn't bounce back that easy? What is it that, you know, you have to have as a vision or something to hold on to that, you know, kind of made you go through the challenges when you did not have that team?
Yeah. I mean, the big thing comes down to passion, right? You have to believe in yourself before anyone else will believe in you. And if you can believe in that dream that you have and that you want, then you can go out and, yeah, it might take you 10 times before you find the right one, right? I mean, half the time you hear, you hear companies like Instagram, right? And it's like, yeah, Instagram was 18 months, got acquired for $1 billion. But guess what? They were probably working on, multiple apps before that for years. And they don't always talk about that, right? And it's just two guys. So think about that, right? It's like probably 10 apps, and then it's the Instagram app, which had a different name. And then they put that 18 months around, and it's $1 billion valuation. So you don't have to compare yourself to that, right? You really have to just drive your own journey.
Great. I only have 3-4 minutes left. You recently gave a TED Talk about life and work and life balance. And again, another thing that, especially Iranian Americans, is just we think we have to focus on something, and sometimes find it difficult to have a work and life balance. I don't have a life really, so I'm very boring. Tell me about that. Why is that important? Yeah,
so it's important because I think being an entrepreneur, you have to figure out, right? There's different priorities in life, right? There's work, there's family, there's health, there's career, there's your spouse, whatever it might be. And how do you balance all of those different things while still being an entrepreneur, right? The answer is you can't, right? There is no work-life balance. I'm not going to lie and sit here and say it's easy to do, right? It's the thing is what I learned. I was spending so much time on work because that was my number one priority, to make it successful. Someone's giving me money to make sure that thing was successful. So what I've learned to do is figure out how to manage work and manage life, right? Because I think if you start to manage these different areas and look at things like that, where I can, as opposed to dealing with
Have you figured it out though? Tell us what you figured out, because I'm dying to know that.
Well, I mean, it's an ongoing process, right? But for me, things that I need to do, is be able to define what success means to me personally and professionally, right? What does that mean, and how do I get there? The second thing is, how do I manage stress? Before, I didn't know how to manage stress. I would go out and party, or I'd go out and work out till I passed out, and I would ignore it, right? And you need to find your own way to handle that. I think planning managed downtime is key. So if you're going to go hang out with your parents, as opposed to just hanging out and sitting on the couch, if you plan some sort of activity, then I feel like it's a lot more meaningful. As opposed to just getting up and running to work, maybe you schedule in, you have to go to the gym, right? And then goal setting, I think, is really important, because I'm driven by sort of measurable success. If I don't see progress, then I get demotivated very quickly. So whatever it is, right? If it's a vision board, or the wheel of life, or whatever it might be, find your way of defining those goals. The last piece is mentors, and I've spent a lot of time on mentors over the last few months. And I think my biggest problem was I was always trying to look for mentors that were exactly like me, right? Someone that's in tech or finance. And that was my biggest problem, because I needed to start looking for people from different walks of life, right? If I'm always an optimist, how do I find a pessimist that will not, always make me sad, but look at things a different way, so that I'll make sure that I'm always successful.